This is the future. And humanity is all but extinct.
First, they start skipping prescribed drug dosages. Then they begin touching.
I volunteer as tribute!
You can stop this. You can change things.
I know that there's something more.
Then we've only got one choice. We fight.
Fight the Future with Dan and Paul.
Welcome to Fight the Future with Dan and Paul. I'm Dan.
And I'm Paul.
And today
I'm
we'll
me.
be... and this is Caitlin. Great to have you, Caitlin.
Thanks for having me.
You're in the orbiting underground moon base.
Yeah, the secret layer of LoadingReadyRun. That's right.
Yeah, you've been sworn to secrecy.
Yeah.
Had to do all...
Blindfolded on the way in and everything.
So today we're doing the second volume of the Divergent saga called Insurgent. So Caitlin is someone we know from our hometown of Victoria, British Columbia, where they are both there. And I'm recording in Italy, as always, Rovereto, Italy. Using my time here wisely by watching American sci-fi movies.
Did you see this one in Italian as well?
I did. So I was very confused at times trying to remember which one corresponded to which faction. Like Pacifico means amity, for example.
That's a nice one. I like that.
But yeah, almost all of the names are better in Italian.
Yeah. And I remember from the old episode that 4 is quattro, which is
Quattro, which sounds cool.
much cooler name.
And instead of Dauntless, it's Intrepido,
Oh.
Nice.
which leads to my favorite line in the Italian translation, which is Sono intrepido, ma non stupido.
Nice. I'm dauntless, but I'm not stupid.
Exactly. And it kind of rhymes in Italian, as most things do. So, after we released our original coverage of Divergent, which was our first ever episode, I received a Facebook message from Caitlin that made me want to have her on the show. So this is what it says. I just listened to the podcast and it was a fun listen, ... Wait for it. There's a but. But, being a fan of the genre, I think you might be doing a disservice to dystopias everywhere by not reviewing the actual books, especially Divergent. The movie is awkward and doesn't give you a real idea of what's happening and why. Some of the questions you two had are answered and clear in the book. She talks about some of the things that the movie changes. Then she says, anyway, I'm not the hugest fan of how these movies are distorting this entertaining series. And don't get me started on the latest Insurgent flick. So we're going to get you started.
Yeah, not clear as to what is happening and why would be a great description of the first movie, especially, and the second movie as well.
Yeah, a lot of it was that it was a ton of exposition in Italian. So you both can help me on that one.
I saw it in English, and I still don't quite get what was going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, so why don't we go back to the first book and movie and talk about that a little bit and the things that you noticed that they changed that were really kind of confused the view of this world.
Well, I just think that it could have been a lot more gritty, a lot more simple, and they really made it fancy, and the scope of it is huge. Like, there's not that many people. You know, that's, I think, the part that really bothered me is that they really took away the intimacy of the books and how many people are actually there, what kind of technology they actually have, and, you know, made it all Hollywood with these touch screens and these cars and lots of guns and lots of people that you kind of lose what the whole world's about in the first place if you were reading the books. I think a good example is like when you see the factionless and how they're living in the second movie. In my mind, that's how the Dauntless are living. You know, in the book, the factionists sit around and they pass around cans of food, and everyone takes a spoonful and eats it and passes it on.
So like everybody got a lifestyle upgrade. And
Yeah.
everybody got bumped
Totally.
up a few economic classes.
I was really disappointed because I really liked this series as the book, and then I went to these movies, and especially with Insurgent, like within the first 10 minutes, I'm like, I got to get out of here. I mean, I sat through it, but I was like, I got to get out. It's breaking my heart that they're wrecking it so much.
Yeah. If you've never read or seen Divergent, we're going to talk a little bit more about it from the beginning. You're probably very confused right now. So we're gonna give you some ground rules pretty soon in the story section. But I think we're already seeing how it's great to have you on board, Caitlin,
Well, thanks.
as our expert.
Yeah.
So as far as Triss, though, in the book, if you can clear away the movie
Yeah.
a little bit from your mind, was there something about her journey that you really connected with?
Yeah, I mean, she's from Abnegation, and they don't really show her kind of having the struggle she has with shaking that abnegation side of her. Like, it is a source of strength for her, and so, you don't really see her struggle with being divergent, with having this, internal battle between her abnegation, her erudite, and her dauntless self, like when it comes to different situations she has to deal with. But she's
Yeah.
a really small, petite person who comes to Dauntless and just becomes this powerhouse. Like, I think even the actress is a little bit too tall or too, not representing the Triss that's in the book, because a lot of people call her little girl, like she's really seems like an unlikely adversary or, dauntless killer, like she's a really small person. And so like how her internal struggle between all of her different Divergent, her factions that she tests for, is just really interesting, and how she sees things and knows things more than other people because her mind works differently.
I like that actually because she's not fully dauntless, so she doesn't have quite the same fighting capabilities or whatever as everybody else, but she can sort of compensate for it in other ways by using these other aspects of her. She uses her the erudite thing of sort of going up to a higher vantage point to try and find the flag.
Yeah.
Or that kind
You've
of
just
stuff.
written a better movie, one where she uses her combinations to solve problems.
Yeah.
Which is not what happens in these movies
like
in
they
general.
make her really girly and almost meek in this movie. Like there's a lot of things that Four does that she does. Like she's the one really, kind of spurring the things that happen. Like she's a lot more important and aggressive and the leader in some ways than Four is or anyone else.
Cool. Okay, well, there's a lot of good stuff there. Let's move on to the story.
The story.
The world of, in Divergent, the book, it's Chicago, and it's run down, and there's 5 factions, and people are separated into these 5 factions, and if they don't live in one of them, then they're factionless and pretty much homeless. This book starts off with Triss getting ready for her aptitude test, which she does, and ends up being rated for 3 different factions, which is not a good thing, and she is Divergent.
Can either of you name all the factions at top speed without stumbling?
Abnegation, Candor, Erudite, Amity, and there's one more. And Dauntless.
Dauntless. Yeah, they don't exactly trip off the tongue.
No, they don't.
Can we say briefly what they are?
Yep, so there's Abnegation, and they are selfless. And Candor, they're honest. Erudite are the smart people. Dauntless are the strong, brave people. And Amity are the kind of the peacekeepers.
And they each have a role in the society. The Candor are the judges and lawyers, and Erudite are the scientists and all this kind of stuff. So they not only are the personalities, but all the actual jobs seem to be kind of divided up by the factions as well.
Yeah, so the whole plot line of the first book and the first movie is set in motion by Triss being identified as a Divergent, as having these 3 different factions that she could be allied with.
Or rather, not being identified, in that she is revealed to be this, but she is told that she has to keep it secret.
Right, because Divergents are hunted in this world. They're considered a danger to the society.
Yeah.
After careful thought, not actually that much thought, but she decides to join Dauntless, and they seem the coolest.
Yeah.
What with all their extreme sports and parkour and jumping and running and stuff.
A lot of in the first movie is her proving herself that she belongs in Dauntless, and then discovering this nefarious plot involving Dauntless.
Yes, between Dauntless and Erudite. She kind of catches wind, and with the help of Four, catches wind that the leaders of Erudite and Dauntless are up to something.
What did Abnegation do it again? They're caretakers.
Yeah,
They're politicians.
Yeah, they govern.
The idea being
okay.
that the selfless people are the best people to have as your government.
Yeah, and they help the factionless and feed them and clothe them. And
Right, so there's a mass slaughter of the Abnegation, including her parents, at the end of the first movie. There's some kind of mind control being used on the Dauntless to facilitate this execution. And it ends with her confronting the head of Erudite, played by Kate Winslet.
She uses the same controlling serum stuff on Kate Winslet, on Janine, in order to force her to stop the mind control on the Dauntless people. And so it stops the this murder of all the Abnegation. The movie ends with her and Four and a few of her friends escaping on a train out to the sort of outskirts of the city.
yeah, they're escaping to Amity, which is actually beyond the fence.
And then the second movie starts with them at Amity. But yeah,
You
the
never
idea
see
that
them.
Amity is beyond the wall is not talked about.
But it is true that they are actually beyond the fence.
So these are fences that you can pass through at certain points.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's why 4 is so important. Is in the book, he actually knows the pin number to open the fence. Like, so they take this train.
1, 2, 3,
4.
4.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of combination an idiot would have on his luggage.
Yeah,
So they starts with them all at Amity, this kind of motley crew of Dauntless folks.
And also Triss's brother, who's Erudite.
They're not fitting in very well. They get into fistfights regularly.
Mm-hmm.
Or knife fights.
She flips a table and then, tries to use the knife that they were going to be... that
Yeah, the
she was
butter
eating.
knife, yeah.
The butter knife.
to get Peter.
Yeah.
Peter eggs are on.
Yeah, Peter's kind of a dick.
Oh, he is. He's supposed to be.
He's played by Miles Teller, who's the Whiplash guy. But basically, she's in a lot of angst at this point. A lot of people died in the first movie, which she takes responsibility for to some degree.
They're in Amity and, not fitting in terribly well. And they keep sort of hearing reports. The most important one is that Janine, the head of Erudite, has released a statement saying that the Divergent were the ones responsible for the massacre of Abnegation.
Yeah.
Abnegation.
Abnegation.
Yes.
Yes.
And she's declared martial law and is after them because
Right.
they started it.
When Janine says the Divergent are responsible for the this terrible thing, I'm like, isn't Triss and Four the only two Divergent? There aren't that many Divergent. It's not like there's a big Divergent
Yeah.
army hanging out somewhere.
So they're in Amity, and then Erudite invades with their huge tanks and lots of people and their Divergent scanners.
Amity was depicted as this kind of idyllic commune with lots of wooden structures and animals and children playing. And I'm like, this just exists so it can be crushed by totalitarian state, right?
Yeah.
Like that's I had a premonition at that point.
Yeah, Amity appears to be basically like colorful Amish. The Dauntless, who are being controlled by the Erudite, I guess, come in with their guns ablazing, which seems unnecessary. I'm pretty sure like a person with a stick could pretty much take out the entirety of Amity, but they pretty quickly figure out that Amity was harboring these Divergent fugitives. Luckily, they escape in the nick of time on a passing train.
Yeah, which is headed towards the factionless area.
Well, the factionless area is everything that's not one of the 5 headquarters.
Right. There's sort of a ring of factionless around the whole thing.
Yeah, like they kind of
almost.
take over the outskirt, like warehouses and stuff.
And there's a bunch of factionless on the train who are like, hey, this is our train. You get
We're,
off.
we're tough like, although we kind of look a lot like Dauntless anyway. Such
Yeah.
that with the Italian, it took me a while to figure out what was happening.
And so they fight back and forth for a bit. Triss's brother proves himself to be not very useful in a fight, which is fine, considering he's supposed to be erudite.
Yeah.
Not everyone can kick someone in the face, which I like.
Yeah. And so, but just before they are stabbed or thrown off the train or whatever, Four
Magic words.
says the magic words,
Tobias Eaton.
Tobias Eaton. And everybody stops and goes,
You know him?
yeah. Where's Tobias Eaton? You
I
know?
am him.
Boom.
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 It'd be good if there was some scenes where he had to take a shower but couldn't take his jean shorts off.
Never knew Tobias.
Yeah. That's one of his 4 fears.
Wait, did I say 4? Maybe it was 5 actually. Maybe 6 or 7. I keep discovering new fears.
That scene in the movie where he's like you don't get to call me that. My name is Four. And
Yeah.
walk away. You're like, really?
I pictured the Edge having many similar moments in his life. You don't get to call me Colin. I'm the Edge now. So, and the reason for that is that his mom is famous with the factionless, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's their leader, but she's supposedly dead.
He reveals that he actually knew that she was alive, but he just didn't want to talk to her. But he obviously decided that talking to his mom was better than being stabbed.
Thrown off a train.
Yeah.
So then they have dinner with Evelyn.
Naomi Watts? Yeah. I think that she's probably evil just based on the fact that she's a mom and wearing red lipstick. Also, just the fact that she's an older woman in a young adult dystopia makes a good chance that she's evil.
Or up to something.
Up
Yeah.
to something. Scheming.
Yeah. So they have dinner with Evelyn, and she tells them where the rest of the Dauntless people that haven't gone with Erudite are, and they're at Candor. So they go to Candor to reunite with the Dauntless. The Dauntless are really excited to see them, but then the Candor arrests them because they're believing Janine's information that they started it, they did it. So they arrest them, and Fort tells them, well, you guys are the best people to find out if we did it or not because you've got the truth serum, which is what they use as their initiate test. Everyone who becomes a new Candor has to take it. But anyway, so they do the truth serum and they tell what happened and some things are revealed and they're proved innocent. And then that's when they get attacked by the Erudite and Dauntless and they shoot everybody up and everyone passes out because they're getting shot with those transmitters and things. So everybody passes out unless you're Divergent, and then that's who they are trying to capture, the people that don't pass out from these shots, and they're gathering the Divergent and testing them.
But Triss beats the system by pretending to be asleep like the others.
Well, I think she falls down and is knocked out for a second. Yeah, and then she wakes up.
And then it's like, oh wait, because
Conveniently after they go by.
and anybody who doesn't go to sleep, they have these special sensors that they pointing at their faces and check what faction they're supposed to be in. And we find out that there are actually levels of Divergent. So you can be just a little bit Divergent, or you can be super Divergent, I guess. I wrote in my notes where it's like, we're at the point now where it's not enough that Triss is special because she's Divergent. She has to be
Extra special.
She has to be special even among the Divergent.
She's the best Divergent.
Yeah, so she's 100% Divergent. She's diverges completely.
Yeah, she can't even find the place where there was a Vergence.
This is significant because Janine, we find out, has collected this special box, which was one of the main reasons why she started this big fight against Abnegation, because they were hiding this box.
And there's a message inside the box, and Janine wants to know what it is.
Yeah, but the box can only be opened by a Divergent person, because you have to go through all 5, I guess, initiation simulations, yeah, in order to open
And
it.
she's killing Divergent people who are not 100%, and infers that 100% will be just the right amount to open it.
Yeah, so then they get attacked, and they have all these transmitters, and then they're gathering the Divergent. Four asserts his leadership and kills Eric. Then they have the suicide call, so those transmitters somehow, like Erudite's transmitting this message to say, we want Triss, we need her, or else people are going to start killing themselves, and obviously they save 2, and 1 jumps and falls to her death. So that's kind of the spur that gets Triss into a tizzy about, I have to sacrifice myself to save the many.
Mm-hmm.
And she ends up turning herself into Erudite for whatever purposes Janine has, which is to do the sims for the box. So they get Triss there to do the sims for the box. She ends up doing 4 out of 5. And then, so not to kill her, they rest her for a bit. She's in a cell, and Caleb's there telling her that he's selfless because he's willing to sacrifice her, his only family.
Caleb is his brother.
Yeah, her brother, yeah. He's not a good guy.
He's drunk the Janine Kool-Aid.
Yeah, for sure.
So what do he and Janine at that point think is in the box?
They think that, well, there's a message from the founders, and that it will tell them how to stop people from being born Divergent, I guess. I feel like it's like a way to stop, not only like get rid of Divergence, but stop that from happening.
Yeah, I think Janine hopes or thinks the message is going to say that Divergent are bad, and that it's going to, like, you know, back her up on her plan to get rid of them. But nobody knows. So, but she wants to know because she's erudite and needs to know. So then they get Triss back into the sim to do the last sim, so she can open the box. And Peter, who knew, he has a change of heart and fakes her death, so she dies. But really, she's just paralyzed, and then Peter orchestrates her escape. And they're going to escape, but then she's like, no, I have to go back for the box. We need to get the box. My mom died. So they go back, her and Four end up trying to get the box back. And then she can't steal it because she needs to know what the message is because she knows it's important. So they lock themselves in the room, and she does the final sim.
You need all the equipment that Erudite has in order to actually start the whole, like, you can't just take the box and do it somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah, so they had to do it there. So they lock themselves in, and she does the final one, and then the message is revealed. And it's not what anyone thinks.
The big message is that this is not just the only city left in the world after some sort of nuclear apocalypse. This is an experiment. And the Divergent people are the actual point of the experiment. The point of the experiment is to create Divergent people.
Yeah, bring everyone back to their humanity and all the sides of themselves.
Right, we got into this in the last one, that people have been genetically modified to be different, to be, say, more honest, making Candor, or more, less scared, making Dauntless. And they discovered this is a bad idea.
But it turns out this is a bad idea, yeah, which the movies have pretty accurately demonstrated, I feel like.
So why don't they just have all the different factions have sex with each other and see if divergence come out of that? Like, wouldn't separating them defeat the purpose? Anyway, that's getting into plausibility. But, right, so that's the message, is that we're all waiting outside for divergence to be produced.
Yeah, and the box is like, well, considering somebody opened this box, clearly there's at least one Divergent around. Mm-hmm. So come on out. Let's see what happens. And then Janine is like, well, this is awkward. Let's all forget that happened.
Yeah, destroy it. We won't let anybody know.
But then just before they are able to do that, the factionless show up and kill a bunch of people.
Yeah, they arrest Janine and Caleb and
then they broadcast this message
to everybody,
everywhere.
Then the only last scene is when Janine's locked up and Evelyn comes and says, "You're never going to see what's beyond the fence," and shoots her in the head. Dun dun dun.
Plausibility.
This sort of suffers from something I kind of think of as like the Harry Potter problem, where they like introduce a bunch of new elements that don't like deal with the fact that element now exists in the world.
Yeah.
It's like the little scanner things that they have.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait, so that makes basically 2/3 of the first movie completely pointless.
Yeah.
Like if you can just point a thing at somebody and it's like, this person is Amity, then it's like, oh, why do we have the whole simulation thing where you have to choose and do all the stuff? You just point at them, this person is Divergent. Oh, okay, that was easy.
And why do you need to shoot up? Well, my point is, why do you got to shoot up everybody if you've got the scanner? And just so you guys know, the scanner does not exist in the book.
And I mean, and again, you know, also with that scene, those little the little limpet things that they attach to people, like those are an incredibly important, devastating piece of technology that they have invented. They appear to be just like little stun things at first. Erudite has these things that they can shoot at somebody, embeds in their skin, can't be removed without killing them, and allows them to not only influence their behavior, but straight up completely control their bodies whenever they want, which seems like a handy thing to have when you're trying to take over a place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they sort of casually shoot them around. For a second before I realized that they were knocking people out, I was just like, are they just
killing off every faction?
Murdering everybody in the entire building?
Yeah.
Is that the point where they're at now? But
I mean, which it might be. Like, this movie is 90% of it is like people bursting through doors with guns and just shooting everyone, like killing hundreds of people on screen.
Yeah.
I imagine that there are a bunch of erudite that are just like working in their labs on whatever
Yeah.
they happen. It's like, ooh, we found a new kind of mold, and are working it, and just like every once in a while someone sticks their head in and is like, oh hey, this happened.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh okay, whatever, and they
Yeah.
just keep they
And I
just
think
keep
that that's
working.
probably true. Like in the books, I think there's a whole bunch of people who are just oblivious. Like it's way more covert and ambiguous. Like there isn't these holograms of Janine telling you what to think everywhere.
So the factionless are interesting. Like, what's the difference between being factionless and being divergent? I never quite got that.
Well,
It's like factionless is, it's like you are Dauntless, but you suck at it.
yeah. So pretty much either you get too old. Lots of people have chosen to be factionless, or they just didn't fit in, or you weren't smart enough, or you weren't honest enough. I don't think any Abnegation ever get kicked out because their ceremony includes doing like charity, and then you have a ceremony where the leaders wash your feet.
Nice.
Yeah, and then you're in. No one has even thought that these hundreds of people that have just been kicked out of different factions that were coming together. So that's a big surprise that, to when they find them, that they're living together, sleeping together, and like creating their own kind of community within Chicago.
Like, there's an impression, at least in the movie, that the factionless are at least as big as one of the factions, if not bigger.
Oh yeah,
than,
for sure.
Than an entire faction.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that they don't do in the movie is they don't go into what the factionless are doing, and that's actually what Evelyn is doing in the books, is tracking the Divergent.
Oh, she also is tracking.
And she's convinced and somehow kind of knows that the factionless has the highest degree, the most divergent in terms of all the factions. Like the factionless are the solution,
right?
and they're probably bigger than any one faction. Right?
Yeah, so why aren't
So-
they the story the whole time, rather than these weird people living in their dormitories? Is it implied that Triss is the only 100% divergent? I like the part where Janine says, "What are the chances it was you?" Well,
Pretty
Or
high.
yeah, she's like, yeah.
it's almost like it's some kind of a movie.
So there's this box that you have to pass. I don't know if it's the initiation thing, but you have to pass a test for each of the 5 factions in order to open this box. Do people die on the Amity test too? Like, nope, you weren't nice
No.
enough.
Yeah. The Amity one is just really particularly hard for her. Like in the book, she's a real, Amity would be a hard.
Well, in the
One
in
for
the,
She's very into punching things.
Yeah,
And-
she's
As
a
in the
little.
movie.
She's not very nice. Like that's.
and it turns out the Amity test is she has to fight
She has
herself.
to forgive herself.
I was like, really?
Yeah.
You have to
Yeah.
fight yourself? That's what we're gonna do here? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, my thing
Or
is
she has
her-
to not fight herself. That's
Yeah,
the trick.
she has to just forgive herself.
I was hoping that when she fought herself, it would be like her, but wearing black and being the evil version.
With the
of her.
goatee.
They were big on the city being destroyed as part of those simulations. That seemed to be a large portion of every simulation.
Yeah.
Inception thing of everything breaking into little flakes.
Yeah.
We should clarify here, what's happening is for each of these tests, Triss is sort of hoisted up into the air by these snaky tube wire things, and then she experiences a vivid hallucination, and to pass the test, she has to do the right thing.
And
In
there
the different
seems to
cases.
be sort of force feedback stuff too.
Yeah, well, I like the image that we sometimes cut to her in the real world, sort of moving in the air, floating in the air,
Yeah.
reenacting things. I like picturing her leggies just going as she's running. Whee!
Just
They
kind
never
of
show that.
Falling, yeah.
just bicycling in midair. Yeah.
But I think that this is part of my plausibility problem. Is okay. So you got this box. Great, Janine. How did you know how to open it?
I guess there's symbols
Like-
of the 4 things
Yeah,
on the 5 things.
like
on
did
each
it
And
come
it
side.
with
seems
an
to require-
instruction manual?
This intense technology to go along with it.
Yeah, but that's
Uh,
that's my other problem is the technology that they have in general, plus the specific stuff to open this box. All of that stuff does not make sense to me because, there's no faction, there's no industrious faction that's building all these things.
Yeah, so they just found this box. They just dedicated themselves to opening it, but it seems as though they have a high-tech, custom-built facility just for
Opening it.
investigating this box.
Yeah.
Let's see how this plan was supposed to work. First of all, they put a fence around the city of Chicago, which is an enormous area. They left a tiny number of people in this huge rotting city of Chicago.
Well, I think that's just part of the experiment. Like, if you're going to do a lab experiment, you need to have controls and stuff. So, like, there's your control. It's inside the fence. This is how many people are here. We're going to let them stay there for as long as they can and monitor them.
And so clearly the idea that the divergents are not only important but good, you know, they should, it's something that should be encouraged, was lost somewhere along the way.
Well, it's a secret. I mean, the thing that's in the book is that the abnegation leaders know that they're good.
So that somehow revealing that information, that divergents are actually the desired outcome, will influence the outcome of the experiment, I guess, is the idea.
Yeah, I mean, I think the abnegation has been entrusted with this information, these leaders, right? And they're on the brink of telling everybody because they think they're at a point where they have enough divergent people.
You guys are really going to laugh when you hear this. Okay, we got something we got to tell you.
Okay.
All right, you know this world that we're in? It's like, you know, it's all a big experiment, right? We knew the whole time.
Yeah.
This whole systematic warfare between these different factions wasn't even necessary. It's just an experiment, guys.
Yeah, you're going to laugh.
There's like nothing beyond the wall except other people. What? We're not the last people on Earth?
Yeah, they're all waiting to say hi.
Scariness.
Like with Catching Fire, we're looking at this world again for a second time and seeing how, as a dystopia, how scary is it? And what kind of new information is brought to bear that might affect that in this second movie. The revelation at the end would certainly shake up your world, would certainly make you think your life is a lie, essentially.
Yeah, or what now? You just start thinking, well, what now?
Like, you know, if you're like maybe, you know, somebody from Erudite or from Amity or whatever, you're 50 or 60 years old, you've lived here your entire life, you know, you've been pretty happy with your thing, boom, you get hit by this thing. It's like, this is like, holy crap, my entire life is a lie.
Well, first, we're not the only people on Earth. What?
Yeah.
There's nothing scary outside the fence. What? There's other people out there.
Yeah.
What?
The faction system is a joke.
Yeah.
They're actually broken and defective.
Yeah.
Well, all the Dauntless guys who spent most of their time guarding the fence probably feel pretty stupid now.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think your purpose, everyone's purpose is just in question all of a sudden. They're like, well, great.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everyone gets deep all of a sudden. Like, what's this all about? What am I here for?
And
what's the meaning of life?
Everybody sits and listens to Mad World.
A lot of people might be just like, you know what? I am actually totally fine with staying here.
Well, I think that'll be the interesting part in the third movie is how they address that. Because, like, in the book, they, you know, some people don't want to go and don't want things to change. And some people are like, well, let's go check it out, you know? So, yeah.
So, like, at the end of it, if you're just a regular person, it's not quite, it's you know, a lot of the stuff that might have been concerning for you has mostly gotten resolved now.
Yeah. Well, now the scariness is more of like a
existential.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
like your spiritual scariness, you know, like the immediate danger and shoot 'em up is kind of dissipated, and now it's all the big question.
Yeah, and also there's a remarkable number of automatic weapons in this society.
Yeah.
People might not react that well.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah.
How would they do?
I am the keeper of the box. So I am Triss's parents, and I have this thing in my house, which I know has the secret to the whole shebang, the whole world that I live in. I had this secret passed down to me from my parents. I know it's in the box, but I know that I alone won't be enough to convince people. So there has to be this holographic image inside. I know what the message is. I have to have these two ideas in my mind. First of all, that I want to be a good abnegation, want to raise a good abnegation daughter, although she went dauntless, but whatever. And I also hold this secret that one day, maybe not now, maybe 100 years from now, will be the thing that frees everybody. So I keep it somewhere in my house, probably disguised somehow, but not very well because Janine found it. Maybe I just kept it under the sink.
Put like a tea cozy on over it.
Right. Like a funny clock. And maybe Triss grew up with it on the mantelpiece and she didn't even know what it was this whole time. This glowy box that looks very technological. So that's what I would be.
I am a factionless, but just barely a factionless. And I have a lot of anger about that. Like, maybe I was part of Dauntless and was like just under the cutoff for actually getting to stay in Dauntless. And so I'm like, come on. But there's this thing where it's like, okay, so, I did the test and the test said I'm Dauntless. So I was like, okay, let's do this. I'm Dauntless. And then I did it and it sucked. I obviously scrubbed out of the program. And the reason why I did that is I found that I wasn't actually very good at being Dauntless. It was very scary.
And you got beaten up a lot by other teenagers.
Clearly the system was wrong in your case. It's like, or in my case, like clearly the system, it's like it told me that was what I was best at. So what am I now? I'm just some guy. And you start hearing about other factionless. You start meeting up and sort of sharing stories about how you became factionless and people from all sorts of different factions who maybe scrubbed out of their particular things for different reasons. Amity people who weren't happy enough. Candor people who are flagrant liars. And you start coming together under Evelyn. What's cool is that in this context, me being, just barely scrubbing out of Dauntless means that I am one of the more dauntless people in the factionless. So it's like, hey.
When it comes to climbing up things and leaping off things and punching people.
Jumping on and off the train.
Yeah. It's like, sure, I'm not the best at jumping on and off a train, but I'm better than, a bunch of the other people in here. And so, like, when they see all the stuff that I can do in the context of being factionless, I actually look pretty cool. And so you sort of start to find this new kind of place where you belong. The whole concept of divergence starts becoming less important when nobody that you know is part of a faction anyway. The concept of somebody being like, I belong to different factions or I don't belong to any faction or whatever is just like, okay, sure.
Yeah, cool.
Well, I think I would just be one of the Amity people. Okay, so I'm just, tilling my earth. And, the Dauntless come with their big cars and like here a mile away. And I'm like, oh, well, that's irritating and not very peaceful. So I just kind of take off because I'm like, you're wrecking my peace here. I'm just going to mosey on down the line climb a tree. And I'm just going to, go to the orchard and hang out till it all blows over. Right? And I'm just watching from a treetop.
What the hell?
Till they go. And I'm like, what's all this about? This is just really not Amity. This is not how we roll. What's this all about? And then I kind of find out what's going on, and it just sounds ridiculous and quite hostile and not very nice. So I decide to go camping for a week. I'm going to go just take off on my own.
Lots of vacation time in Amity.
Yeah. I just go have a little soulful, introspective journey for a week, and just hopefully all this stuff that's happening with the people in the city, the city people, will get over themselves.
A lot of rushing around for no particular reason.
Yeah, like they just need to calm down, and I just can't handle it. So I'm going to go on a little personal retreat. So,
self-care.
I gather some fruit and food and happy bread and a jug of water, and I go off a little bit, down the way from the Amity, which is, in my world, beyond the fence where the farms are. And I just kind of set up camp when it's dark and then keep moving, and I stumble upon other people.
Ooh.
And I'm shocked because we're supposed to be the only people in the world. So I bust the myth, but there's no one there to share it with, so
you just kind of look up in the sky and go, life is funny.
Yeah, and I'm happy about it.
You sort of realize, you sort of inadvertently gone farther away from the city than anybody else has.
Yeah, I'm just on a happy trip, and I'm just looking.
I like this.
Looking for anything, like followed the butterfly, followed a bird, and then I just stumbled upon more people, and I just don't know what to think because I'm not that smart. I'm just happy.
I like the idea that there's this big revelation that happens, and like everyone's streaming out of the city, and as they're streaming out of the city, they go like past Amity, and they're like, "Guys, you've got to see this." We just unlocked this whole big deal. And Amity's
There's a
like,
world out there. There's
and
people.
Amity's like, yeah.
Yeah.
And they're like, what? It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
There's,
Yeah, they got good zucchini over that way.
they're
the east.
there, yeah. They're like, what? You never told us? Like,
No.
yeah, it didn't seem that important.
No. Yeah.
Dude, you guys didn't ask.
Because I actually, it's funny because I told my friend once, they're like, oh, what faction would you be in? And I was like, oh, I think I'd probably be an Amity. And they just thought that was crazy. They're like, you? And I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do anything. Like, I just want to be happy and have fun, and there's food. And
Yeah.
You know, like, it seems like a no-brainer. But I'm like, what would you think? And they're like, oh, I don't know, like Candor or something. And I'm like, okay. It's funny if you ask friends what faction, you ask your friends, say, hey, what faction do you think I would be in?
As
It's
opposed
like-
to like, who would you be? It's
Yeah.
who would I be? Yeah.
You get them to tell you because it's an interesting conversation starter. But I was like, what?
Hope for the future.
So, I mean, the end of the movie, in terms of hope for the future, I mean, it was very hopeful, right? I mean, the end, there's a
Yeah.
real, you know,
They found the answer.
we found the answer kind of thing. It's like we open the gate and then fade to white or black or
Yeah.
whatever, and then it's like, what could be
Yeah.
out there? And that's sort of the
Well, and I think that's
the
the
thing.
hope you're talking about. There's this hope, but in the back of your mind, you're like, well, what's out there? Is it actually good?
right.
What's actually going to happen? Do we actually want to leave this? And that's, I think, where we're headed is the people that are like, no, factions, it was great. We were fine. Janine was crazy, but she's dead now. We don't, it's fine.
Right.
And then let's bring those back. Or do we create a whole new society, or do we go out and explore? So I think that as much as there's hope for the future, it creates a big dilemma for the future because everyone's going to have a different idea on which way.
Right. At least with the
This
faction,
society should
with the
go.
faction system, everybody kind of knew what was going on.
Yeah.
They had all kind of worked it out. It was pretty stable. And now, obviously, there's a lot more different stuff happening.
But isn't the experiment over? Like, isn't the whole purpose to generate these divergents, and shouldn't the bigger society come in and retrieve them now?
Yeah, that's the idea. Yeah.
So in theory, won't they all just be absorbed into the bigger society that might be there?
Potentially.
Yeah, maybe.
I think the important part is that it's still an experiment. Like the people running the show are scientists. So
Clearly, it has the clear hallmarks of a controlled scientific experiment.
yeah.
Yeah.
But as much as they got the box open, these people, I think, are still going to want to see how it all shakes out.
Mm.
Like, I don't think they're like, oh, we win. Let's go save them all. I think it's going to be like, let's go.
To me, that's what I see, is that we've got divergence. Why keep going? Like,
Yeah.
I guess the question is,
it's not a social experiment.
Is there a certain number of divergence they want? Is there like, do they want to?
Do they all need to be 100%?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
what about 90%?
you know, there's
Are they
always the
okay?
thing where it's like they're gonna get to the fence, then they go outside, and what they thought was outside is actually just like a big screen, and they like break through, and it turns out that they're like in the middle of,
They're in
just
Vegas.
a normal city. Yeah. Something like, you know, the full that they were actually like
Yeah.
inside a giant dome the whole time.
Or they're tiny,
Oh
Right?
yeah.
Yeah.
and they're all on a tabletop with giant scientists peering down on them.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of
It's
all
like a-
sorts of twists and turns it could take.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's too bad they already wrote those, because I could totally help.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of know what happens, but I'm not going to tell you guys because I actually have no idea where the movie's going to go because it's quite different than the book. If you're into the books, I do recommend listening to the books because the woman who reads them is fantastic.
I guess the conclude hope for the future, very hopeful. I mean, one of the more hopeful stories we've covered, really, especially considering this is the second book in a 3-book series.
Yeah, you might say she's run out of story, but we'll see.
Tris, come on, we gotta move. Tris, we have to move.
I can't. I can't. My mom died protecting whatever's inside of this. I have to open it for her, and I think I know how.
Tris, if we don't leave now, we're not gonna get out of
I
here.
have to do this first. I know it doesn't make any sense, but you have to trust me, please.
With my life, apparently.
All security teams be advised.
Do it. Quick, quick!
Divergent saga, Insurgent, and our coverage of this along with Caitlin.
Yes.
Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And thank you for writing that initial Facebook message that inspired this.
Yeah,
inspired
I didn't
get you
want
in on
to
this.
bust all your theories, but I just...
A series like this, which is, it's been quite successful. I think it's sort of the second most successful behind Hunger Games. To have it diverge so much from the book is quite interesting.
And not just like the story, but the actual society, which is kind of what you guys are doing. That was the thing that I'm like, you guys need to know.
Yeah, then it's like, that's not
it's
actually how it
way
goes.
more simple than it seems. Like the trains, they just go. No one drives the trains. They never stop. Like in this movie, you notice all the people who've never jumped on a train, like Caleb or Marcus. They do quite fine jumping on and off the trains, but like they don't do that.
Going at
Only
full
the Dauntless
speed.
do this, and the factionless. Like, but
It doesn't slow down at any point.
No. Yeah. So just the world is a lot different in the movies than in the books, and that's what you guys are talking about. So.
Do you ever look at your employees? So you manage a swimming pool. In fact, the one that we both, me and my brother, used to go to.
Yeah.
When we were kids. And you too, yeah. Do you ever look at your employees and try to categorize them into factions? Like which are the Dauntless?
But now I'm probably going to. Now that you've said that. But I definitely could. But I did start doing that a little bit when someone, asked me what faction would you be in, and then they told me which faction they thought I would be in, and it kind of gets your mind reeling about people that you see and know, and if you let it, But now I'm totally going to. Those are our next groups that are in service.
All right. Well, thanks so much. And I'd like to remind you at this point that it's a Loading Ready Run podcast.
Yes. And as with everything on Loading Ready Run, all our podcasts and videos, all that stuff, it is supported by our Patreon, patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. So if you like what you see and hear, please check that out. Also, the intro music was composed by Bradley Rains, and all the interstitial segments are by Kiara Kant. If you like this podcast and you want to hear more of it, you can subscribe in iTunes, or you can subscribe on the Loading Ready Run website. And we are always looking for feedback. You can review it on iTunes, or you can comment on the YouTube video or on our forums at loadingreadyrun.com/forum. So thank you very much for listening.
Yeah, and may the Candor always make you dauntless and erudite, and fill you with amity and never abnegation. That's how it goes, right?
Nice. Yeah, I like the way you wove that seamlessly.
It's a mashup.
Yeah, that was.
I just watched Pitch Perfect, and I know mashups are the solution.
Yeah, and omit the factionless because they don't count.
Right. All right. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.
Ci vediamo.
Perfect.